Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to come back and we're going to use the parts that I took off of this reel, the Daiwa 2600C, in a video that I just showed asking or answering the question, when is too much grease too much? And we're going to use those parts to repair another 2600C. This one's silver, that one in gold, but this one was brought to me by a channel viewer, Steve, who told me that as he was fishing this reel that he was battling a striped bass off the coast of New Jersey, and the reel failed, and it failed in the gearing. And he asked me if I could repair it, and I knew that I had this donor reel, so I told him that that would be something that we should go do, and he brought it over to me. So we're going to take this one apart. I'll show you how to replace the main gear and the pinion gear. I will show you how to properly lubricate it so that we don't wind up in a mess like we did on this last video, and we'll see if we can get it back working and giving him a chance to make this work once again. So one of the things we notice right away is there's an awful lot of excessive play in the spool. You shouldn't be able to move this up and down by the hand, and that means that most of the gearing is stripped out there, whether it's in the oscillation gear, which is the smaller one, the main gear, or the pinion gear. And since I have all of those parts from the donor reel, I'm going to go ahead and replace them as a set. It would be foolish to try and repair one piece and find out that another one was the cause of the failure. So since we have them, we'll go ahead and do a total rebuild on this reel. So I start by taking off the handle. This is a through handle, and I like to put that nut right back onto the handle just so that I don't lose that. It's a screw, not a nut. I'm wearing my protective glove that always accompanies me as I do this work, and we're going to go ahead and take the side plate off so that we can pull the spool and get at the gearing. So to do that, these are Phillips head screws. I believe they have a through slot, so that if you like, you could go ahead and use a flat bladed screwdriver on this one if that's your preference. I'm going to use the Phillips head here. I'm putting the pieces into a parts bucket, and I'm actually cross-contaminating these because I have some parts from this donor reel in there. But I recommend that you use a parts tray when you do disassemble a reel. It gives you a place to find the parts when you go to reassemble, and it's also a convenient place so that you don't knock them around. As a matter of fact, I just left these on the deck just to show you what we got out of the donor reel. The donor reel was actually purchased for the side case to repair a broken reel foot. We have the corresponding side plate that completes this particular reel. And then we got some of the pieces that I'm going to use internally in this reel. So I have the main gear, I have the oscillating gear, I have the crosswind block, I have the pinion gear. I also have some up top anti-reverse pieces, and the ball bearing which goes on to the pinion gear. So with that, I'm going to continue the assembly. And we did a video just posted that was how much grease is too much. This is about the proper amount of grease, and Steve followed one of my earlier videos to do that, and then he found that it still wasn't working right. So, and you can hear that now that the side plate is off. You can really hear that the gears are worn here. Okay, so those are going to go, take that off and put that into the parts tray. Now we're going to rotate this so that we can bring the spool gear down. And we can remove that now. That has a Phillips head screw in it as well, holding in the crosswind block. And once we do that, we can pull the spool and the shaft in one piece. You don't have to take the spool out. In order to do that, that just comes right out. I'm just going to inspect it to make sure it's clean, and he did a nice job of cleaning this reel, so no problem there. Now we're going to take off the rotor nut. That'll give us access to the rotor and the top end, and I just heard all the bottom end fall out, but that's okay. So one of the things that's probably a good thing to notice at this point is if you don't know the reel, take pictures along the way so that maybe you can avoid the catastrophe that just happened here. There's it's obvious here where the wear is. I can see this right away. The hole in the oscillating gear is beyond that's what's causing the movement up and down here. So we'll get rid of that one. We'll repair this one. We're going to replace this. There are worn teeth. If you look at the reel from the side, this is how you can tell how the reel failed. Looking at it from the top, you can see that there's worn teeth here that are flat spotted. If you look at the side, it becomes more pronounced. So you can see nice sharp teeth, and then it really flattens out here before it goes back to the good teeth. And that's what's caused this particular piece to fail. But again, I'm going to take all of these parts off just because I like to do the match set. And I'm going to put those worn parts off to the side just because I want to make certain that that I don't reinstall the bad parts. Okay, so we're going to take the top off now. Here's your top end. I always like to take the anti-reverse dog off so that you don't bang it around. So we're going to just leave that in the off position. It's controlled by this lever. We're going to pull the anti-reverse key, lay that down the way it should be laid down. I'm going to take the old one from the other reel off. And we have 3 screws holding on that pinion gear assembly. So again, these are Phillips head screws. And we're going to go right in and right out on this, so I'm not going to put these into my parts basket. But use a digital camera, use your cell phone camera along the way, just so you know the sequence that you took these pieces out and how to reinstall if you get stuck, if your memory failed you, which we're all prone to. That'll give you a good way to do that. Here's the third one. And once we get that out, we can pull the pinion gear, we can pull the bearing and the retainer plate all at once, which is what we just did here. And I'm not going to even mess with this one just because something has failed. We know that it's chewed up here, that it may have been because of a rough tooth on this one here. So I'm just going to take this whole assembly, pull off the bearing in that, get rid of this gear. And as I mentioned, we're going right back in with this one. So this is the one from the donor reel. I have the bearing from the donor reel I'm going to put on there. This was operating as a set, so I like to just keep it as a set if possible. And when I do this, now we're also answering that question from the other video, what's too much grease, what's the right amount of grease as we go along here. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of blue grease and get that onto the teeth here. I'm also going to put a little bit of blue grease into the shaft that rides in that inner part of the case. Again, he did a nice job here, and kudos to him in terms of putting the proper amount on. Okay, once we do that, then we can come back here and put the tie-down collar on. And this is an offset. You just have to rotate it so you have them lined up. And then we can go ahead and put the 3 small Phillips head screws back in. So the 2600 is one of those reels that's worth every penny you pay for it. Steve was telling me he's had this one for years and doesn't owe him anything, but it's kind of a personal favorite of his. It's a personal favorite of a lot of us. It's just durable. It doesn't fail for the most part. Very versatile. You can use this in rivers, you can use it in lakes, you can use it out on the ocean. And he was battling a big striped bass, so it's rugged beyond its size. So if you have the opportunity to pick one of these up, I'm showing you kind of how to rebuild them here. And if you take the time, clean them up, rebuild them, replace any faulty parts that may be at issue there, then you'll have a champion reel for a long time. So I would encourage you, if you like the Daiwa product line and the associated quality that goes behind those reels, go ahead and pick one up and give it a try. So you can buy these depending on the condition. You know, if they're ready to fish, they're probably going to be $25, $30. If they're in pieces and parts, it'll be less than that, but you'll probably have to make an investment in there somewhere along the way. But if you can buy one of these relatively reasonable, and you certainly get a lot of value here. Okay, so we just put the anti-reverse ratchet collar on, and now we're putting the anti-reverse back on, and then we'll go right ahead and put that spool back on. And that's the top end of the reel properly serviced and with the pinion gear replaced. I'm going to tighten that one down now. I also get complaints from time to time that the rotor wobbles. moves side to side, that's because the collar nut is not tight enough. So you need to make sure that that's tight, not over tightened, but tight. That'll take the wobble out of it, and there's a test drive for you right there, and it's spinning beautifully just the way it should. Okay, now we're going to go back and we're going to go do the oscillating gear. He's got some grease in there already, and again, I'm taking all of the gear set from that other reel. It was poorly managed in terms of the service, but the gears are in good condition, so we're going to go ahead and put them in. Put the oscillating gear in, and now we have bushings here, so bushings go on each side of the side plate. We're going to make sure we get those in. So this one has the bushing in it already, so I don't have to replace that. And then we can install the, I'll take a little bit of grease onto the front side of the oscillating gear. I'm going to go grab the main gear now. I'm going to put this one in, grease on both sides of the shafts that control the main gear and sit in the bushings. We'll place that in here. Spin it again to make sure that the oscillating gear is spinning. And we already got quite a difference going on there. So we're going to lower this down so that we can get it down to the spool shaft. Oops, probably put it in too soon. That's okay. Put the shaft, the crosswind block in first, then we can go put the main gear back in. We got that back in. It's time to put the spool assembly back on. We can put a little bit of grease on that spool assembly, not much. Sometimes you can just put the oil in there, but just enough to give it a sheen. Again, too much grease is as bad as no grease. It'll just cause failures because the contaminants will collect, and when you've got the contaminants in there, it's just going to accelerate the wear on the reel. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, so now I'm just looking for a centering pin. In this case, I'll just grab an awl so that we can get the pin lined up with the screw hole. Grab the little crosswind block screw. I think it slipped down again. It did. A lot of times these crosswind blocks will actually seat it. In this case, it kind of floats it, lets the screw do the work there. And we should be good. And those of you that watch my videos know this is the portion of the program where we have problems with small pieces and parts. So just bear with me a moment. In this case, it's not helping that I have the magnetic tip. It's actually pulling it away. Okay, so we're winding this one up. Spin it again. We're not seated. There we go. Spin it again. Make sure we got the workings. Put that side plate back on. Grab the side plate screws. And that's all it takes to button this up. Good thing I had an extra one in here. Pick that one up in a moment. I'm trying to get too much started at once here due to the time on the videos. And these are threaded screws. They're not some of the other ones that you see out there. Sometimes you see the screws that have the ones that are for graphite. These are not for graphite. These are full threaded metal screws. I suppose if you lost one, it's a standard threading. You can go get one from a hardware store or a general supply. Okay, last one. Because they're threaded, you want to just be careful that it's not cross-threading as you're putting them in. This one seems to be a little bit difficult. We'll go grab the one that fell on the floor. Sometimes those case screws are just a little bit funny. I use a solid plastic mat on the floor just so I can see where my pieces fall, should they fall, and unfortunately I have to tell you they fall more times than I would like to admit. Okay, here we go. Oh, I'm just having some difficulty with that one. Let's try one more time, try a different one. So I probably should not have cross-contaminated my two sets of case screws there. I just made a leap of faith in the assumption that they're going to be different and or be the same, and they weren't. There you go. That's a nice, easy turn to it. There you go. All right. So we got a much smoother reel now. We got a full gearing in there. All we have to do is put the handle on and give it a test drive. And Steve will be out fishing for those striped bass come the fall. And that's coming up. Okay, last set. Put that handle back on. Grab that flat-bladed screwdriver. And we're ready to declare this one a success. There we go. Nice 2600 reel that's ready to go the distance and provide another few years of service there. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you've learned a little bit about what causes reels to fail in the meantime. Saw how you could take two reels and make it one. Learned a little bit about how to determine whether you've got a bad main gear, which you do here with the worn teeth, and how to take a reel apart, put it back together. And I hope you didn't get too frustrated by me putting the wrong side plate screws in there. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe to my channel. And with that, I'm going to thank you for viewing it. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a good day.